Hi there. Tonight we're going to step back in time, way back, to an age of castles and kings, of mud and myth. Imagine yourself under a sky so vast and dark, it feels like a heavy blanket draped over the world, studded with stars that actually feel close enough to touch. You can smell the damp earth, the distant smoke from a peat fire, maybe even the faint, lingering scent of last night's communal stew. This isn't a world of Wi-Fi or even indoor plumbing, my friend. You're about to experience the life of a single man in the Middle Ages. A life you probably won't survive, given your current affinity for hot showers and stable political systems. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, tell me where you're listening from, and what time it is for you right now, in the comments below. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You feel the chill of the earthen floor against your bare feet, a constant, grounding sensation. The world you inhabit, dear listener, is one of raw elements and unyielding labor. You were born not into a hospital with beeping machines and worried parents, but into a humble, often smoky, hovel in a small, self-contained village. Your first breath is a gasp of cold, wood-smoke-tinged air, and your first sound is likely swallowed by the rhythmic hum of daily life just beyond the wattle and orb walls. You are a peasant's son, an unheralded arrival in a world where lineage matters immensely, even if yours offers little in the way of immediate privilege. Your name, perhaps something common and solid like Thomas or William, will carry the weight of generations of toil and faith. From the moment you can crawl, the ground is your closest companion, a gritty teacher that shapes your early understanding of existence. Your world isn't defined by abstract concepts or far-off lands, but by the tangible, the scratch of straw, the rough texture of homespun cloth against your skin, the distinct, earthy smell of the livestock penned just outside your door. The sun, moon, and stars are your clock, your calendar, and your guide. You learn to interpret the subtle shifts in light, the changing winds, the whisper of the growing grain, because your very survival depends on it. There are no school bells, no textbooks, no scheduled playdates. Instead, your earliest memories are inextricably linked to the rhythms of the natural world and the necessities of a hard-scrabble life. You might remember your mother, her hands gnarled and strong from endless work, kneading dough or spinning wool, her voice a low drone as she recites a simple prayer or hums a folk tune. Your father, a silhouette against the rising sun, already heading to the fields, his broad back an unspoken lesson in endurance. There's a pervasive sense of timelessness here, a feeling that life has always been this way and always will be. Historians still argue whether medieval peasants truly understood the concept of social mobility, or if they simply accepted their lot with a resigned faith. Either way, for you, the idea of a different life, a vastly different world, is as alien as a dragon with a top hat. A curious tidbit: many peasant homes had a central hearth without a chimney, meaning smoke would simply fill the space before, eventually escaping through a hole in the roof or cracks in the walls. Imagine waking up every morning with that persistent smoky aroma clinging to everything, your clothes, your hair, even your dreams. It certainly added a certain je ne sais quoi to the medieval air, wouldn't you agree? And while we might romanticize the simplicity of such a life, let's be real, you'd probably spend half your day wiping soot from your eyes. You learn quickly that life isn't about comfort, it's about endurance. The boundaries of your village feel like the edge of the known universe, and every sound, every shadow, holds a deeper meaning in this world that demands constant vigilance and an intimate connection to the land. This is your start, an unvarnished introduction to a life dictated by the soil beneath your feet and the will of powers far beyond your control. As a small boy, your playground isn't filled with swings and slides, but with the practical tools of survival: a rough-hewn wooden spoon for stirring thin porridge, a tiny basket for gathering kindling, or perhaps a miniature hoe given to you by your father. Childhood, as you might understand it today, is a luxury not afforded to you. Instead, you learn quickly that play is a fleeting moment snatched between chores, a brief escape into the imagination before the demands of reality pull you back. Your education isn't in scrolls or Latin, but in observation and imitation. You watch your elders with an intensity born of necessity, absorbing every movement, every gesture, every whisper of advice. Your small hands, though still soft, soon grow accustomed to the rough textures of wool, the scratch of straw, the cold dampness of soil. You learn to differentiate between edible berries and poisonous ones, to spot a rabbit's burrow, to mend a tear in a tunic with surprisingly deft stitches. These aren't hobbies. They are vital skills passed down through generations, ensuring the survival of the family unit. You might be tasked with scaring crows from the newly sown fields, your shrill shouts echoing across the quiet landscape, or perhaps collecting dried dung for fuel, a less glamorous but equally essential chore. Every task, no matter how small, contributes to the collective well-being. Your lessons come from the rhythm of the seasons, the wisdom of your grandparents, and the calloused hands of your father. You learn about the moon cycles for planting, the subtle signs of changing weather, and the ancient stories that bind your community together. There's no formal schooling, no literacy for most, but a rich oral tradition and a deep, intuitive understanding of your immediate environment. You know the names of every plant, every animal, every star that guides the farmers in the night sky. Historians still argue whether medieval peasants truly possessed a rich inner life beyond their daily struggles, or if their existence was primarily focused on mere survival. For you, the two are inextricably linked. Imagine, if you will, the simple joy of finding a bird's nest with speckled eggs, a fleeting moment of wonder amidst the ceaseless work, or the feeling of pride when you successfully complete a task, earning a rare word of praise from your stoic father. These small victories are the currency of your childhood. You learn about responsibility early, carrying the weight of expectation on your young shoulders. There's no allowance, no pocket money. Your worth is measured by your contribution to the household economy. A quirky tidbit: some medieval children's toys, when they existed, were often miniature versions of adult tools, like tiny plows or spinning wheels, subtly reinforcing their future roles from a young age. Talk about early career planning. The sun dictates your day. You rise with it, a faint grey light barely piercing the small window opening in your hut, and you work until it dips below the horizon, casting long purple shadows across the fields. Evenings are for mending tools, sharing what little food there is, and perhaps listening to an elder recount a local legend or a tale of a distant saint. Sleep comes easily, a heavy, dreamless oblivion born of physical exhaustion. There are no bedtime stories from illustrated books, only the soft murmur of adult voices, the rustle of straw, and the occasional snore from a sibling. You learn about your place in the world not through grand pronouncements, but through the consistent, quiet demonstration of what it means to be a productive member of a peasant family. This early life, though devoid of modern comforts, instills in you a resilience and a practical wisdom that will serve you throughout your long, demanding life. You exist, quite literally, in the shadow of the manor. From your earliest memories, the distant outline of the Lord's dwelling, whether a formidable stone castle or a larger timber hall, is a constant presence on the horizon. It's a physical manifestation of the power that governs your life and the lives of everyone in your village. You don't question it, it simply is. The Lord, whoever he might be at any given time, a knight, or perhaps even an abbot. If your village belongs to a monastery, is the ultimate authority, the figure to whom all loyalty and labor flow, your family's existence. Your very ability to till the land and keep a portion of its yield is predicated on his grace. He owns the land, and in exchange for your toil, he offers protection. Protection from what, you might ask? From roving bandits, from rival lords, from the general chaos that can erupt in a world without strong, centralized governance. This protection, however, comes at a significant cost, one you feel acutely in your bones every single day. You see the Lord's reeve, his appointed manager, making rounds, ensuring that quotas are met, that taxes are paid, that everyone falls into line. His authority is absolute, backed by the threat of his armed retinue and the weight of tradition. You learn early about the corvée, the forced labor you and your family owe to the Lord. This isn't just about paying rent. It's about spending a significant portion of your week working directly on the Lord's domain, his personal lands. Imagine finishing your own grueling day in your small, rented plot, only to face several more days of work on the Lord's fields, planting his crops, repairing his fences, or digging his ditches. It's a double burden, a constant drain on your energy and time. Historians still argue whether medieval peasants truly felt oppressed by these obligations, or if they simply viewed them as an unchangeable part of the natural order. For you, it's just the way things are, as immutable as the rising and setting sun. A quirky tidbit: some lords held boon days where peasants were expected to provide extra, unpaid labor during peak farming seasons, often with the promise of a small feast at the end. It was a clever way to incentivize grueling work, like a medieval pizza party after a particularly brutal shift. You'd likely groan at the prospect of more work, but the thought of extra ale and a bit of roast meat might just be enough to keep you going. You certainly wouldn't want to be the one who didn't show up. That would draw the wrong kind of attention. The Lord's justice, too, is swift and often brutal. If a dispute arises in the village, if someone steals or commits a crime, it's the Lord's court that dispenses judgment. There are no lawyers, no lengthy appeals, just the Lord's word, or the word of his appointed bailiff. You learn to walk a straight line, to keep your head down, and to avoid any action that might displease the powerful figure in the manor house. Even your personal life, your marriage, the inheritance of your meager possessions, all are subject to the Lord's ultimate approval. You need his permission to leave the land, to marry someone from another village, or even to sell your livestock. It's a pervasive control that seeps into every aspect of your existence. This constant awareness of the manor's shadow, of its demands, and its power is a fundamental pillar of your life, shaping your decisions, your aspirations, and your very understanding of freedom. Your life, dear listener, is fundamentally tethered to the daily grind of agriculture. It's not a job you clock in and out of. It's your entire existence, a demanding dance with the earth that begins before dawn and ends long after dusk. The fields are your office, your church, and sometimes your tormentor. You rise with the sun, or even before it, the air still crisp with the morning dew, your breath pluming in the cold. There's no time for lingering, no luxury of a slow wake-up. Every minute counts, every ray of sunlight is precious, especially during the crucial planting and harvesting seasons. You trudge out to the communal fields, often with your family, your neighbors, and the other men of the village. The tools are simple, heavy, and unforgiving. The wooden plow, pulled by oxen, or perhaps a single, sturdy horse if you're fortunate. The scythe, its sharp blade, a constant danger. The heavy hoe that bites into the stubborn earth. Your hands quickly become calloused, your back perpetually aching. But you learn to ignore the discomfort, pushing through the fatigue. This work isn't just about strength. It's about endurance, about the sheer willpower to keep going when every muscle screams in protest. Spring brings the arduous task of plowing, breaking up the compacted earth, preparing it to receive the precious seeds. You walk behind the plow for miles, your feet sinking into the fresh furrows, the smell of damp soil filling your nostrils. Then comes the planting, a meticulous process of scattering seeds by hand, hoping for good weather and a bountiful yield. Summer is for weeding, for tending the growing crops, for praying away pests and drought. You might spend days bent over, pulling weeds one by one, a meditative but back-breaking task. Historians still argue whether medieval peasants truly felt a spiritual connection to the land they worked, or if it was merely a means to an end. For you, the connection is visceral, a deep-seated understanding that your life and the lives of your loved ones depend entirely on the earth's generosity. Autumn is the harvest, the most critical period of the year. This is when the fruits of your labor are finally gathered. Imagine the sheer effort of cutting down vast fields of grain by hand, bundling it, and then threshing it to separate the precious kernels from the chaff. It's a race against time, against the encroaching cold and the threat of rain ruining the crop. You work from sunup to sundown, fueled by anticipation and a desperate hope for a good harvest. A quirky tidbit during harvest. It wasn't uncommon for communities to share a harvest lord or harvest queen who would lead the laborers, sometimes even engaging in playful rituals to boost morale. Think of it as a medieval team building exercise, but with way more sweat and considerably less corporate catering. And then winter comes, a time of relative rest, but also of anxiety. You repair tools, weave baskets, perhaps spin wool, but always with the knowledge that the stored food must last until the next spring. There's also the tending of livestock, sheep, pigs, chickens, which provide wool, meat, and eggs, supplementing your diet and offering an additional source of income, however small. The rhythm of your life is dictated by these agricultural cycles, an ancient, unbroken chain stretching back through generations. You are a small, vital cog in this vast, natural machine, constantly working, constantly adapting, constantly hoping for the mercy of the weather and the fertility of the land. Your palate, dear listener, is a stranger to the rich diversity of modern cuisine. Your food is simple, stark, and utterly essential for survival, a constant reminder of the fine line between sustenance and starvation. There are no Michelin stars. Here no Instagram-worthy meals, just the honest, often bland, taste of necessity. The backbone of your diet is grain, primarily oats, barley, or rye, which are ground into flour to make your daily bread or cooked into a thick, hearty porridge. This porridge is often your breakfast, lunch, and dinner, a comforting, if monotonous, staple. Imagine a large communal pot simmering over a low fire, filled with grains and water, perhaps with a few scavenged wild herbs, if you're lucky. That's your meal. Bread, baked in the communal oven, is also a constant presence, often dense and dark, a far cry from the fluffy white loaves of today. It's hard work to chew, but it fills your belly and provides the energy you need for another day of toil. Vegetables are another crucial component, often grown in small garden plots near your home. Cabbages, onions, leeks, and beans. These are not gourmet vegetables, mind you, but robust, earthy varieties that can withstand harsh conditions and provide vital nutrients. Meat is a rare luxury, reserved mostly for special occasions like festivals or after a successful hunt. You might have a few chickens, providing eggs and occasional meat, or perhaps a pig that will be slaughtered in autumn. Its meat salted and preserved for the winter months. Fish, if you live near a river or the coast, might supplement your diet, but it's still a treat, not an everyday occurrence. Dairy products, like cheese and milk, come from your small herd of cows or goats, adding a bit of fat and protein. Historians still argue whether medieval peasants suffered from widespread malnutrition or if their diet, though limited, was generally adequate for their physically demanding lives. You certainly feel the constant hunger, even if you're rarely truly starving. A quirky tidbit: fasting was a significant part of medieval life, with numerous days throughout the year dedicated to abstinence from meat, dairy, and eggs, often for religious reasons. Imagine having even less to eat on those days, pushing your already strained body to its limits. It really makes you appreciate your Saturday morning bacon, doesn't it? These fasts weren't just spiritual exercises. They also helped stretch limited food resources, particularly during the leaner winter months. Sugar, refined spices, or exotic fruits are things you've only heard whispers about, if at all, from traveling merchants or returning soldiers. Your sweeteners come from honey, if you can find it, or occasionally from foraged wild berries. Water is your primary beverage, often drawn from a communal well or a nearby stream, though ale, a weak, small beer, is also commonly consumed, even by children, as it's often safer than untreated water. The threat of famine is always lurking in the background, a terrifying shadow cast by bad harvests, war, or disease. Every season's yield is a gamble, and a poor one can mean real hardship, even starvation, for your family and your village. Your relationship with food isn't about pleasure or variety. It's a raw, primal bond with the earth, a testament to simple survival. Your housing is not a home in the modern sense of a personal sanctuary. It's a functional shelter, designed for survival rather than comfort. Imagine a structure that feels less like a house and more like an extension of the earth itself. Your home is typically small, often a single, rectangular room shared by your entire family, and sometimes even by your most valuable livestock during the harsh winter months. The walls are made of wattle and daub, a woven lattice of wooden strips, plastered with a mixture of mud, clay, straw, and animal dung. It's surprisingly effective at keeping out the wind and rain, but don't expect anything too pristine. The roof is usually thatched with straw or reeds, providing insulation but also a convenient nesting place for mice and insects. Light enters through a single, unglazed opening, perhaps covered with a wooden shutter or a piece of stretched animal bladder during colder weather. There are no windows you can look out of, no glass panes to admire the view. Privacy is a concept that simply doesn't exist. You sleep on straw pallets laid directly on the earthen floor, sharing body warmth with your siblings and parents. In the morning, you might feel a lingering dampness from the ground, or the subtle shift of the straw beneath you as you stir. Historians still argue whether medieval peasants truly felt a sense of ownership or attachment to their humble dwellings, given their impermanence and shared nature. For you, it's simply the place, the only home you've ever known. A central hearth is the heart of your home, a shallow pit where a fire constantly sputters. This fire provides warmth, cooks your meager meals, and offers the only source of light after dark. As we discussed earlier, often there's no chimney, so the smoke fills the room before slowly escaping through a hole in the roof or cracks in the walls. Imagine the constant acrid scent of wood smoke clinging to everything: your clothes, your hair, even the very air you breathe. It stings your eyes and leaves a persistent cough in your chest, but it also means warmth and the comforting smell of cooking. It's a trade-off you don't even think about. It's just life. Furniture is rudimentary and sparse. Perhaps a rough wooden table, a few stools, and storage chests for your family's few possessions. Everything is practical, built for durability and function, with no room for decorative flourishes. You live in close proximity to your family, hearing every sigh, every cough, every rustle in the night. There are no separate bedrooms, no quiet corners for contemplation. Life is communal, from your shared meals to your shared sleeping space. A quirky tidbit: to combat pests like fleas and lice, it was common practice to regularly strew fresh herbs and straw on the floor, which would then be periodically swept out and replaced. So, your medieval home probably smelled a bit like a compost heap mixed with a very faint hint of lavender. Delightful, right? The sounds of your home are the soft crackle of the fire, the murmur of voices, the occasional squeak of a mouse in the thatch, and the breathing of your family. In winter, the cold seeps through the walls, making you huddle closer together for warmth. In summer, the heat can be stifling. Your home is a testament to resilience, a simple structure that provides the bare necessities of shelter against the often unforgiving elements. It reminds you that possessions are few, and true comfort lies in the collective survival of your family within these humble walls. Your universe, dear listener, is contained within the confines of the village. This isn't just a collection of huts and fields. It's your entire known world, a microcosm of society where every face is familiar, every sound reverberates with meaning, and every life is deeply intertwined with your own. You know everyone, from old Alara, who spins the finest wool, to young Thomas, who always seems to be up to mischief near the pig pen. This close-knit community is your social safety net, your entertainment, and your unwritten rulebook. Life here is a constant, visible tapestry of human interaction. You work alongside your neighbors in the fields, sharing the burden of plowing and harvesting. You share the communal oven for baking bread, the village well for drawing water, and the small, often muddy, paths that connect one dwelling to another. Gossip spreads quickly, news travels by word of mouth, and reputations are built and broken not by grand deeds, but by consistent behavior and adherence to unstated norms. There's a powerful sense of collective identity, a shared destiny tied to the success or failure of the harvest, the health of the livestock, and the favor of the Lord. Social life largely revolves around communal activities. Sundays at the village church offer a brief respite from labor and a chance to see everyone dressed in their simple best. Festivals, tied to the agricultural calendar or religious holidays, are rare bursts of joy and revelry, chance for feasting. perhaps some dancing, and a break from the monotony. These are moments when the strictures of daily life loosen slightly, and you can truly feel the warmth of human connection. Historians still argue whether medieval village life fostered genuine camaraderie or was often riddled with petty feuds and suspicions. For you, it's a mix of both. A messy but essential reality, a quirky tidbit. Many medieval villages had a commons, an area of shared land for grazing animals or collecting firewood. This communal resource was vital, but also a frequent source of disputes over boundaries or overuse. Imagine the arguments over whose cow ate whose thistle. It certainly added a touch of low-stakes drama to an otherwise predictable existence. Beyond the shared labor and occasional festivities, there's a strong sense of mutual dependence. If a family falls ill, neighbors will often pitch in to help with their fields. If a roof needs repairing, hands are lent. This isn't just charity, it's pragmatic survival. You know that one day you might need the same help. There's no formal police force beyond the Lord's Reeve, so disputes are often settled informally by village elders or the community as a whole. Justice, when it happens, is public and often designed to restore harmony rather than punish severely. The boundaries of your world rarely extend beyond the few miles surrounding your village. The nearest town is a significant journey, perhaps a day's walk, and anything beyond that is a vague, often frightening, concept whispered about in tales. Your sense of self is deeply rooted in this small, familiar place, a humble but enduring testament to the power of community in a harsh world. For you, the church is not merely a building, it is the very bedrock of your existence, permeating every aspect of your life from birth to death. It stands as the most prominent structure in your village, often larger and more enduring than any other, a symbol of divine authority and earthly guidance. On Sundays, you gather with your entire community inside its cool, damp walls, the scent of stale incense and old stone filling your nostrils. The priest, a figure of immense local respect and spiritual power, leads the Latin Mass, a ritual largely incomprehensible in its spoken words, but deeply meaningful in its gestures and solemnity. You are taught from a very young age about heaven and hell, about sin and salvation, about the terrifying power of God and the intercession of the saints. The Church provides a framework for understanding a confusing and often brutal world. It explains natural disasters as divine displeasure, offers solace in times of hardship, and promises eternal reward for a life of piety and obedience. You learn the basic prayers, perhaps the Ave Maria and the Pater Noster, recited with quiet devotion. These aren't just words. They are your direct line to a higher power, a source of comfort when faced with the harsh realities of medieval life. Historians still argue whether medieval peasants truly understood complex theological doctrines or simply adhered to the rituals and moral teachings presented to them. For you, it's about faith, simple and unwavering. The Church's influence extends far beyond weekly services. It dictates the calendar of your year, marking the seasons with religious festivals like Christmas, Easter, and various saints' days. These holidays provide welcome breaks from labor, often accompanied by feasting and celebration, but they are fundamentally rooted in spiritual observance. The Church also acts as a social hub, a place for announcements, communal gatherings, and even some informal dispute resolution. It instills a pervasive moral authority, shaping your understanding of right and wrong, of duty to God and to your fellow man. A quirky tidbit: Some medieval churches had doom paintings above the chancel arch, depicting vivid and often terrifying scenes of the Last Judgment, complete with devils dragging sinners to hell. Imagine looking up at that every Sunday, a constant visual reminder to keep on the straight and narrow. It certainly put the fear of God into you, didn't it? The church also demands its due. The tithe, a mandatory payment of 1/10 of your produce or income. This isn't a suggestion. It's an obligation, enforced with the same rigor as the Lord's taxes. You carefully set aside a portion of your harvest, your chickens, eggs, or your meager earnings for the church, knowing that failure to do so could jeopardize your immortal soul. The ringing of the church bell marks the hours of the day, calls you to prayer, and tolls for the dead, a constant reminder of life's brevity and eternity's promise. It's a source of both comfort and control, a spiritual anchor in a world filled with uncertainty, and a powerful force that shapes your very perception of reality. The shadow of the manna isn't just about the Lord's presence. It's about the pervasive network of feudal obligations that bind you to the land and to your superior. From the moment you are old enough to understand, you learn about the myriad duties and taxes owed to your Lord, a constant, often invisible, burden on your family's shoulders. This isn't a simple rent payment. It's a complex web of services and dues that define your legal and economic standing. You are, in essence, an integral part of the Lord's estate, and your labor is his most valuable asset. Firstly, there's the labor service, or corvée, which we touched upon earlier. Imagine having to spend specific days each week, or certain peak seasons, working directly on the Lord's domain, cultivating his crops, maintaining his buildings, or digging his ditches, all without pay. This is your primary contribution, a tangible manifestation of your fealty. It means your own fields might suffer, or your family might have to work even harder in their spare time, just to keep pace. It's a constant juggle, a balance between fulfilling your obligations and ensuring your own survival. Then come the payments in kind. This isn't about money, which is scarce for you anyway. Instead, you owe a portion of your harvest, perhaps a specific number of bushels of grain, or a certain quantity of eggs, cheese, or livestock. Imagine carefully counting out your precious chickens, or measuring out 1/10 of your hard-won wheat, knowing that it's leaving your family's meager stores. These payments are typically collected by the Lord's reeve, a stern figure who ensures every last bit is accounted for. Historians still argue whether medieval peasants were more burdened by labor services or by these payments in kind. For you, they both represent a significant drain on your limited resources. A quirky tidbit: in some regions, peasants owed a heriot, a payment of their best beast or chattel, to the Lord upon their death. It was a rather grim form of inheritance. Tax, ensuring the Lord profited even from your demise. Think of it as the ultimate exit even in death. You couldn't escape your feudal contract. Your family would feel the sting of losing a valuable animal at an already difficult time. You also face various dues and tolls. Perhaps you must pay a fee to grind your grain at the Lord's mill mulcher, or bake your bread in his oven banalites. These are monopolies, ensuring the Lord profits from every essential service. If you wanted to marry someone from outside the manor, there might be a merchat, a fee paid to the Lord for permission. Even leaving the land, should you ever contemplate such a daring act, would require the Lord's permission and likely involve a significant payment to buy your freedom. These aren't just rules. They are the very fabric of the feudal system, designed to keep you tied to the land and to ensure a continuous flow of labor and resources to the Lord. You learn to live within these constraints, to navigate them as best you can, understanding that defiance carries severe, often insurmountable, consequences. This constant pressure of obligation shapes your decisions and limits your horizons, making true autonomy a distant, almost mythical concept. Formal schooling, dear listener, is a luxury almost entirely beyond your reach. There are no village schools, no primers, no stern teachers drilling you in arithmetic or Latin. Your education is an intensely practical one, learned not from books, but from the relentless demands of your environment and the skilled hands of your elders. It's an apprenticeship to life itself, beginning in your earliest years and continuing through your young adulthood. Your classroom is the muddy field, the smoky hut, the bustling village square. You learn by doing, by observing, and by repetition. You watch your father mend a broken plowshare, and soon you're handed a hammer and a piece of scrap metal to try your own hand. The sparks flying, the metal resisting your clumsy blows. You learn the precise angle to hold a scythe for harvesting, the best knot to tie to secure a load, the subtle signs that a storm is brewing. This isn't theoretical knowledge. It's the kind of wisdom that keeps you alive and fed. Historians still argue whether the lack of formal literacy amongst peasants limited their cognitive abilities or simply channeled their intelligence into different, practical forms. For you, it's simply the way your world operates. Beyond the agricultural skills, you acquire a vast range of practical knowledge essential for daily living. You learn basic carpentry, enough to help repair a fence or a stool. You learn how to identify wild edibles, how to set a simple snare for small game, and how to preserve food through salting or drying. You understand the habits of local animals, the properties of different timbers, and the subtle changes in the soil that indicate fertility or exhaustion. This is an education rooted in necessity, passed down through generations, not in written form, but through demonstration and oral tradition. A quirky tidbit: while most peasants were illiterate, many could read the natural world with incredible skill, interpreting animal tracks, weather patterns, and plant growth with an accuracy that would astound a modern meteorologist or botanist. Imagine being able to predict rain just by the smell in the air, or finding your way through a dense forest by the moss on the trees. It's a different kind of smart, isn't it? You also learn social skills, how to negotiate with neighbors during shared tasks, how to defer to authority figures like the Lord's Reeve or the priest, and how to participate in the communal life of the village. You understand the unspoken rules of etiquette, the importance of reputation, and the power of tradition. Morality and ethics are taught through the Church's teachings and the communal judgments of your elders. You learn the folk tales and songs that embody your people's history and values, absorbing them through endless repetition around the hearth fire. This isn't an education that gets you a degree, but it prepares you perfectly for the only life you're expected to lead, a life of hard work, community, and quiet endurance. It makes you incredibly resilient, incredibly self-sufficient, and deeply connected to the rhythm of the land. As a single man in the Middle Ages, the concept of love often takes a back seat to the harsh realities of economic survival. While emotions certainly existed, the very idea of marrying for romantic love, as portrayed in modern tales, was largely a foreign concept, particularly for those of your social standing. Marriage was, first and foremost, an economic and social contract, a strategic alliance between two families designed to ensure labor, consolidate land, and produce heirs. Your personal feelings, while perhaps a pleasant bonus, were rarely the primary consideration. For you, marriage was often delayed due to economic factors. You couldn't simply choose a bride and set up a home. You needed land to support a family, tools to work it, and enough stored food to get through the lean times. This meant waiting until your parents perhaps retired and passed on their small plot, or until you managed to save enough through extra labor or a stroke of luck to acquire your own piece of land. Imagine the frustration of wanting to start your own family but being utterly dependent on forces beyond your control, the generosity of your parents, the availability of land from the Lord, or simply a good harvest season that allowed for a little extra saving. This waiting period could stretch for years, well into your 20s or even 30s, making singlehood a prolonged and sometimes lonely state. Historians still argue whether delayed marriage contributed to higher rates of social unrest or simply fostered stronger community bonds among young, unattached men. For you, it's just the reality of growing up. Your interactions with potential brides would likely be formal, perhaps arranged by your families, or simply arising from the limited pool of eligible women within your small village. Courtship, if it existed, was practical and public, often involving communal gatherings and the unspoken approval of the elders. There was little opportunity for private romantic encounters, and certainly no dating apps. A quirky tidbit: in some medieval cultures, bundling was practiced, where a courting couple would share a bed, fully clothed and separated by a board or sheet, to get to know each other without impropriety. It sounds absurd to us now, but imagine trying to have a serious conversation about your future while trying not to accidentally kick a board. Romance truly was a different beast back then. The pressure to marry was immense, both from your family and the community. As a single man, you might be seen as less settled, less responsible, and certainly less complete in the eyes of society. A married man with children represented stability, continuity, and a productive unit within the feudal system. You'd likely be encouraged, perhaps even subtly coerced, by your parents to find a suitable match to secure the future of the family name and labor force. The church, too, promoted marriage as the only acceptable avenue for sexual relations, and the continuation of God's plan. The lack of economic means meant that many single men found themselves in a precarious position, dependent on their natal families for their upkeep, or perhaps working as laborers for others, without the independent status that marriage and land ownership would bring. This dependence further limited your autonomy and cemented your status as a perpetual boy in the eyes of the community, no matter your age. The dream of love, then, was often intertwined with the dream of economic stability, a distant horizon that you constantly worked towards. While the majority of single men in your world are bound to the soil, working the fields and living the life of a peasant, not every path leads directly back to the plough. For some, a different future beckons, a life that takes them beyond the fields and into varied, often more uncertain realms. These are the paths less traveled, offering a glimmer of something different, even if it means trading one set of hardships for another. One common alternative is to pursue a craft, if your village is large enough, or if a nearby town offers opportunities. You might be apprenticed to a carpenter, a blacksmith, a weaver, or a stonemason. This isn't a quick escape. It's a long, arduous commitment. You'd leave the familiar rhythms of the farm for the clang of the forge, the rhythmic hum of the loom, or the dusty scent of cut wood. Your new master would provide food and lodging, but your labor would be his, often for 7 years or more, before you could even dream of becoming an independent craftsman. This path requires a specific aptitude and the rare opportunity to secure an apprenticeship, but it promises a potential for greater skill and a life not entirely dependent on the whims of the harvest. Historians still argue whether medieval peasants viewed urban life as a true escape from feudalism or simply a different form of servitude. For you, it's a distant, sometimes alluring possibility. Then there's the military life. The Lord might raise a small retinue, or a larger army might be called up for a campaign. For a young, unattached man, the idea of becoming a soldier can be tempting. It offers adventure, the promise of plunder, and a chance to escape the monotonous cycle of village life. You'd trade your hoe for a spear, your rough tunic for a padded gambeson, and the familiar scent of manure for the smell of sweat, steel, and fear. But this path is fraught with immense danger. Battles are brutal, disease is rampant in camps, and death is a constant companion. The few who survive and perhaps gain some coin might return to their villages with tales, but many more simply vanish, becoming anonymous casualties of forgotten wars. A quirky tidbit: some medieval armies actually had camp followers who were essentially traveling merchants, providing everything from food and drink to repairs for armor and weapons. So, even on campaign, you might find a pop-up shop selling questionable ale and battle-worn boots. Talk about convenience store shopping. In the middle of nowhere. Finally, there's the church, offering a profoundly different kind of escape. For some single men, a life in the clergy provides a spiritual calling, but also a path to literacy, intellectual pursuits, and a degree of social standing otherwise unattainable. You might enter a monastery as a monk, dedicating your life to prayer, study, and manual labor within the cloistered walls, far removed from the dirt and grime of peasant life. Or you might become a parish priest, serving a village, albeit one perhaps not your own, and gaining a unique position of authority and respect. This path demands celibacy and rigorous spiritual discipline, but it offers a measure of security, learning, and purpose that few other avenues can provide. Each of these alternatives presents its own set of challenges and opportunities, pulling you away from the familiar fields and towards an uncertain, yet potentially more varied, existence. Should you choose to leave the familiar smell of the fields behind and venture into a town, your world expands, but not necessarily in ways that are immediately comfortable. For a single man seeking opportunity, the burgeoning towns of the Middle Ages offer a structured, albeit demanding, path. The guilds, these aren't just clubs. They are powerful, exclusive organizations that control almost every aspect of a particular craft or trade within a town's walls. Becoming a part of a guild is your ticket to a stable livelihood, but it's a long, arduous journey. Imagine the bustling streets, a cacophony of sounds and smells utterly different from your quiet village. The clanging of hammers from a blacksmith's forge, the rhythmic thud of a weaver's loom, the cries of merchants hawking their wares. If you have an aptitude for a particular skill, you might seek out a master craftsman, a tanner, a baker, a shoemaker, a carpenter, and offer yourself as an apprentice. This is your entry point into a world governed by strict rules and hierarchies, far removed from the feudal obligations of the countryside, yet equally demanding in its own way. The guild system provides a clear path for advancement, from apprentice to journeyman to eventually master. Each stage demands rigorous commitment, patience, and unwavering dedication. You're not just learning a trade. You're learning a way of life, steeped in tradition and exacting standards. The guild ensures quality, protects its members from outside competition, and provides a rudimentary social safety net. But it also dictates your prices, your methods, and even the number of apprentices you can take on if you ever reach that stage. Historians still argue whether guilds primarily fostered economic prosperity or stifled innovation through their rigid controls. For you, they represent the best chance for a secure, skilled livelihood. A quirky tidbit: many guilds had elaborate initiation ceremonies and secret signs or passwords to identify their members. Imagine having to recite a strange rhyme or perform a specific handshake just to prove you were a legitimate tailor in the next town over. It was like a medieval secret society, but with more emphasis on buttonholes than world domination. Your master, who takes you in, becomes a surrogate father, responsible for your training, your food, and your lodging. You live in his home, often sleeping in the workshop or a small attic room, and your days are spent in ceaseless labor, learning the intricate details of your chosen craft. There's little time for leisure, and certainly no pay in the early years. Your reward is the knowledge you gain, the hope of future independence, and the social standing that comes with being a skilled craftsman. The transition from peasant to urban artisan is a significant one, trading the cycles of nature for the precise demands of the workshop and the rhythms of the field for the constant hum of town life. It's a gamble, but one that offers the promise of a more settled and perhaps more prosperous single life than the one you left behind. Your years as an apprentice are less about learning a trade and more about becoming an extension of your master's will. You are the lowest rung on the ladder, a glorified servant for much of your tenure. Imagine waking before dawn, often in the very workshop where you toil to rekindle the forge fire, fetch water from the well, or sweep the floor. Your days are long, your hands are always busy, and your learning is often achieved through painful trial and error, accompanied by the occasional sharp word or cuff from your master. Apprenticeship isn't a school. It's a grueling, hands-on immersion into a specific craft. You learn by observation, by imitation, and by sheer repetition. If you're apprenticed to a blacksmith, you spend hours pumping the bellows, learning the nuances of the fire, the way the metal changes color as it heats, the precise moment it's ready to be struck. If you're a weaver's apprentice, you untangle threads, prepare the loom, and watch for hours as your master's fingers fly through the warp and weft, slowly beginning to understand the intricate patterns. There's no formal curriculum, just the daily demands of the workshop and your master's watchful eye. Historians still argue whether the strict hierarchy of apprenticeship suppressed creativity or was essential for transmitting complex skills. For you, it's simply the path to a future, however distant. Your lodging is basic, often a cot in the workshop itself, or a small, cold room in your master's house. Your food is whatever your master provides, usually simple and sufficient, but rarely abundant. Your only possessions are the clothes on your back, and perhaps a small, worn token from home. You have no wages. Your labor is your payment for room, board, and invaluable instruction. This can be a lonely existence. While other single men your age might be toiling in the fields alongside their families, you are far from home, often in a bustling, impersonal town, bound to a master who demands tireless effort. A quirky tidbit: some apprenticeships included a formal ceremony where the apprentice would swear an oath to their master, promising obedience and diligence. Imagine a serious, formal vow, just to be allowed to clean out a stable or polish your master's boots for the next 7 years. It certainly put the solemn in solemn undertaking, wouldn't you say? After years, typically 7 or more, of this demanding existence, if you prove yourself capable and your master deems you ready, you finally graduate from apprentice. This isn't the end of your journey, but merely the end of the beginning. You won't be a master craftsman yet. Instead, you'll enter the next phase, that of the journeyman. You'll gain a measure of freedom, but also a new kind of uncertainty, as you prepare to seek your fortune beyond the familiar walls of your apprenticeship. This period of learning shapes not just your hands, but your character, instilling in you a deep understanding of hard work, discipline, and the value of a well-honed skill. With your apprenticeship finally complete, you step out from under your master's direct authority, not yet a master yourself, but something new, a journeyman. This stage marks a significant shift, offering a taste of freedom that was denied to you as an apprentice, but also introducing a new kind of uncertainty. Now you work for wages, often moving from town to town, refining your skills and seeking employment wherever it can be found. These are your wanderings. Imagine the open road stretching before you, perhaps a simple bundle containing your few possessions slung over your shoulder. You're no longer tethered to a single workshop or a single master. You carry with you a letter of recommendation from your former master, a testament to your completed training and good character, your medieval resume, if you will. This document is crucial, opening doors to other workshops and potential employers in unfamiliar towns. You might spend months, even years, traveling, working for various masters for short periods, absorbing new techniques and perfecting your craft. Historians still argue whether the journeyman period primarily fostered independence or simply delayed full mastery due to economic necessity. For you, it's a chance to see more of the world than your peasant brethren could ever dream of. Your aim during this period is not just to earn a living, but to build a reputation, to deepen your expertise, and to save enough money to one day establish your own workshop. You might work alongside other journeymen, sharing stories of different towns and different masters, a camaraderie forged in shared experience. The work is still hard, and the hours are long, but now you have the dignity of earning your own keep, of having a measure of control over your own labor. You're trading the rigid dependence of apprenticeship for the precarious independence of paid work, often on a temporary basis, a quirky tidbit to prove their skill and creativity. A journeyman often had to produce a masterpiece. Yes, that's where the word comes from. A particularly intricate or challenging piece of work before being admitted into a guild as a full master. Imagine the pressure of crafting the perfect buckle or the most beautifully woven tapestry, knowing your entire future hinged on its acceptance. No pressure, right? Life on the road isn't without its dangers. Bandits, unscrupulous employers, and the ever-present threat of illness are constant companions. You rely on the hospitality of inns, the charity of monasteries, or perhaps the kindness of strangers. But despite the hardships, there's a sense of adventure, a feeling of self-reliance that comes with navigating the world on your own terms. This period of your life is crucial for shaping you from a boy learning a trade into a skilled artisan, ready to take on the challenges of establishing your own livelihood. It's a journey that culminates, hopefully, in the ultimate goal, becoming a master craftsman and perhaps, finally, settling down. For a single man in the Middle Ages, the path of the celibate clergy offers a profoundly different existence than the one most men experience. It is a life chosen, or perhaps destined, not for the earthly pursuits of land and family, but for spiritual devotion and scholarly endeavor. If you felt a calling, or if your family, perhaps unable to provide for all its sons, directed you towards the church, you would embark on a journey that separates you from the secular world. Imagine exchanging the rough, practical clothes of a peasant or artisan for the simple, often dark, robes of a cleric. Your days are no longer dictated by the rising and setting of the sun over fields, but by the ringing of bells marking the hours of prayer, matins, lauds, prime, terce, sext, none, vespers, and compline. This is a life of rigorous discipline, of contemplation, and often of quiet study. For many, it's the only path to literacy and access to books, which are incredibly rare and valuable commodities. You might learn to read and write Latin, the universal language of the church, and scholarship, opening up a world of knowledge previously inaccessible. Historians still argue whether the celibacy requirement for clergy was primarily for spiritual purity or a practical way to prevent church property from being divided among heirs. For you, it's a non-negotiable vow, a profound commitment. This path promises a measure of security. Unlike the precarious existence of a peasant constantly at the mercy of harvest or lord, a cleric, whether a parish priest or a monk, is generally assured of food, shelter, and a community. There's a distinct social standing that comes with your position, a reverence from the common folk who look to you for spiritual guidance and comfort. You become a pillar of the community, interpreting scripture, administering sacraments, and offering counsel. A quirky tidbit: some medieval monasteries kept elaborate bee-books detailing the care of their hives, as honey was a crucial sweetener, and beeswax was vital for candles. Imagine a monk meticulously tracking the health and output of his buzzing charges, combining spiritual devotion with practical beekeeping. It certainly gives new meaning to the phrase, busy as a bee, doesn't it? The life of a celibate clergyman means forsaking marriage and family. There will be no wife to share your hearth, no children to carry on your name. Your family becomes the broader church, your community the monastery or parish. This can be a solitary existence, but it is also one filled with profound purpose. You are dedicated to God, to the salvation of souls, and often to the preservation of knowledge. You might spend your days copying manuscripts, tending to the sick, teaching rudimentary lessons, or simply praying. This life, while demanding, offers intellectual stimulation and spiritual focus, making it a compelling alternative for single men seeking a different kind of fulfillment in the tumultuous Middle Ages. If the path of the parish priest offers you a life among the common folk, the monastery walls present an entirely different realm, one of deliberate separation from the clamor of the secular world, a sanctuary dedicated to quiet devotion and communal living under strict rule. For a single man seeking profound spiritual focus, intellectual pursuits, or simply a stable existence away from the unpredictability of outside life, entering a monastery is a transformative choice. Imagine crossing the threshold of those ancient stone walls for the first time. The air inside feels different, cooler, quieter, imbued with a pervasive sense of sanctity and order. The bustling world, with its incessant demands and temptations, recedes, replaced by the rhythmic tolling of bells, the murmured prayers of your brethren, and the hushed sounds of purposeful work. As a monk, your days are meticulously structured, according to the rule of Saint Benedict, a detailed guide for monastic life emphasizing prayer, work, and study. You wake in the dead of night for matins, join your brothers in the choir for hours of chanting, and spend the rest of your day engaged in a variety of tasks. From manual labor in the monasteries, fields, or workshops to intellectual work in the SCRIPTORIUM. This life provides stability and purpose. Unlike the precarious existence of a peasant or the wandering life of a journeyman, a monastery offers permanent shelter, regular meals, and the security of a brotherhood. You own no personal property. Everything is held in common. Your clothes are simple, your food basic, and your bed a straw pallet in a communal dormitory. It is a life of humility and self-denial, designed to purify the soul and bring you closer to God. Historians still argue whether monastic life primarily served as a spiritual refuge or also played a crucial role in preserving classical knowledge during the Dark Ages. For you, it's a commitment to a higher calling. A quirky tidbit: some medieval monasteries were famous for their elaborate breweries or vineyards, producing not just sustenance for the monks, but also income for the abbey. Imagine monks meticulously brewing ale or tending grapevines, combining pious devotion with a very practical skill that helped fund their spiritual endeavors. It certainly puts a new spin on holy spirits, doesn't it? In the scriptorium, if you are among the literate, you might spend countless hours carefully copying ancient texts, illuminating manuscripts with intricate designs, or perhaps even composing new works. This is where knowledge is preserved and transmitted, where the intellectual heritage of centuries past is painstakingly maintained. Outside, in the monastic gardens or fields, you contribute to the monastery's self-sufficiency, working silently alongside your fellow monks. The quiet camaraderie among your brothers, bound by shared vows and shared purpose, replaces the bonds of a traditional family. Your legacy might not be children, but a beautifully copied text, a well-tended garden, or simply a life of quiet, unwavering faith within the sanctuary of the monastery walls. If the quiet contemplation of the monastery or the steady rhythm of craft life doesn't call to you, there's always the raw, visceral world of the soldier. For a single man, especially one with little to lose, joining an army can seem like an intoxicating blend of adventure, escape, and the faint glimmer of glory. But beneath the romanticized tales lies the brutal truth, the soldier's harsh realities. Imagine trading your peasant's tunic or journeyman's apron for the scratchy wool of a military uniform, perhaps even a piece of hardened leather or chainmail. If you're lucky enough to be properly equipped, your days are no longer about sowing and reaping or hammering and weaving, but about marching, training, and the ever-present threat of conflict. You learn to wield a spear, a sword, or a bow, your body hardening through arduous drills and forced marches. Discipline is paramount, enforced by stern commanders and the harsh realities of survival. One wrong move, one moment of hesitation, and your life could be forfeit. Historians still argue whether medieval soldiers were primarily motivated by loyalty, plunder, or simply the desperate need for employment. For you, it's a desperate gamble for a better, or at least a different, life. Life in the army is a study in extremes. Long periods of mind-numbing boredom, spent in dreary camps, are punctuated by moments of intense, terrifying violence. You sleep on hard ground, often exposed to the elements, and your meals are meager, sometimes consisting of little more than stale bread and a bit of dried meat. Disease is a constant companion in military camps, often claiming more lives than actual combat. Dysentery, fever, and infection from untreated wounds are ever-present threats, turning a grand adventure into a grim struggle for survival. A quirky tidbit: medieval armies often employed a variety of specialized support staff, including barbers who also performed basic surgery, farriers for the horses, and even scavengers whose job was to strip the dead after battles. Imagine having a barber who's also responsible for amputating limbs. Talk about a versatile skill set. The promise of plunder is a powerful motivator. After a successful siege or battle, soldiers might be allowed to loot enemy towns or camps, seizing whatever valuables they can find. For a man who has known only poverty, the thought of silver coins, fine cloth, or even just a decent pair of boots can be incredibly alluring. But plunder is rarely guaranteed and often leads to brutal excesses. The bonds formed with your fellow soldiers, your comrades in arms, become incredibly strong, forged in shared hardship and the face of death. They are your new family, relying on each other for survival in a chaotic world. Yet, the life of a soldier is often short and almost always brutal. You witness horrors, inflict violence, and constantly face the very real prospect of your own demise. It's a path that offers a stark alternative to the peasant's life, but one that comes with a heavy, often deadly, price. Building on the soldier's harsh realities, you might find yourself in an even more precarious and morally ambiguous branch of military life, that of the mercenary. Unlike a soldier loyal to a specific lord or kingdom, a mercenary fights for pay, for coin, and for whoever offers the most. For a single man with few ties and a need for quick money, this can be an irresistible, if dangerous, proposition. Imagine the stark contrast. Instead of the slow, grinding poverty of the village, or the disciplined structure of a lord's standing army, you're offered a lump sum of silver, perhaps even gold, for your fighting prowess. It's an intoxicating promise of immediate wealth for someone who has known only scarcity. You might join a company of hardened veterans, men from various lands, speaking different tongues, but united by their skill with a weapon and their desire for profit. Fighting for pay offers brief riches, but these riches are often fleeting, quickly spent on ale, women, or gambling in the taverns of whatever town you're currently occupying. The life of a mercenary is defined by constant movement and shifting loyalties. One week you might be fighting for a French duke, the next for an English king, and the week after that, perhaps against a rebellious baron. Loyalty is fluid, a commodity bought and sold, and the only true allegiance you hold is to your coin, purse, and, perhaps, to your immediate band of brothers in arms. This detachment can be liberating in a way, freeing you from feudal bonds, but it also means you fight for causes you might not believe in, inflicting violence on strangers without personal grievance. Historians still argue whether mercenaries were viewed as purely amoral opportunists or simply pragmatic individuals seeking a livelihood in a violent age. For you, it's a job, albeit one with extraordinarily high stakes. A quirky tidbit: some mercenary companies develop their own distinctive flags, battle cries, and even internal legal systems, functioning almost as independent mini-states within the larger medieval conflicts. Imagine carrying a banner with a snarling wolf or a laughing skull, signifying your unit's fearsome reputation. It's certainly made for a dramatic entrance on the battlefield, but with this fleeting fortune comes immense risk. Death is a constant companion, perhaps even more so than for a regular soldier. Mercenaries are often sent into the thickest fighting, seen as expendable assets. Battles are chaotic, brutal affairs where a misstep, a moment of hesitation, or an unlucky blow can end your life instantly. And if your employer loses or simply runs out of money, you might find yourself stranded, unpaid, or even hunted as a brigand. There's no pension, no stable home to return to. The money is good while it lasts, but the well can run dry, and your life hangs by the slenderest of threads. It's a life lived on the edge, propelled by the lure of gold and the thrill of combat, but always with the knowledge that your next battle could be your last. Beyond the confines of the village, the workshop, or the battlefield, there exists another path, one fraught with peril but promising the allure of distant lands and the potential for greater wealth, the life of a merchant. For a single man with a sharp mind, a sturdy constitution, and a willingness to brave the unknown. Taking to the open road offers a challenging but potentially rewarding alternative. Imagine exchanging your simple peasant's garb or soldier's armor for sturdier, more practical travel clothes, perhaps a hood against the elements and a reliable knife at your belt. Your office becomes the winding, often poorly maintained, roads and trails that crisscross the medieval landscape. Your companions are not just other merchants, but also armed guards you hire for protection, pack animals laden with goods, and the constant awareness of lurking dangers. This isn't a leisurely stroll. It's a calculated risk, undertaken with the hope of profit and the thrill of encountering distant goods. Historians still argue whether medieval merchants were primarily driven by altruism, connecting communities, or pure. For you, it's about making a living, and perhaps a name for yourself. You might trade in local produce, carrying surplus grain from one region to another where it's scarce. Or perhaps specialize in more valuable commodities like wool, cloth, salt, or even more exotic items if you venture further afield. Your success depends on your ability to haggle, to assess demand, and to anticipate risks. You learn to read people, to judge character, and to navigate the complex web of local customs and laws in different towns. Every market day is a performance, a delicate dance of supply and demand where your shrewdness can mean the difference between a tidy profit and a significant loss. A quirky tidbit: medieval merchants sometimes used a form of bills of exchange, early versions of checks, to avoid carrying large amounts of coin, which was risky. Imagine essentially wiring money across medieval Europe by handing over a piece of parchment that said, "Pay bearer X amount of shillings" upon presentation. It certainly made life easier than lugging around heavy bags of silver, and arguably more secure than a medieval PayPal. However, the dangers are manifold. Roads are infested with bandits, eager to relieve you of your valuable cargo and your life. Rival merchants can be cutthroat, engaging in sabotage or spreading false rumors. Travel is slow and arduous, subject to the whims of weather, broken carts, and treacherous river crossings. You might spend weeks away from any established settlement, relying on the hospitality of monasteries or rough inns, or even camping under the stars. Illness is a constant threat on the road, far from any familiar comforts or healers. Despite these challenges, the lure of independent wealth and the freedom of not being tied to the land or a single master can be incredibly strong. You are a single man forging your own path, relying on your wits and courage, driven by the desire to carve out a place for yourself in a world that offers few easy answers. Regardless of the path you choose, whether you remain a peasant, become a craftsman, or brave the roads as a merchant, there's a subtle but pervasive societal undercurrent that affects you. The stigma of the bachelor, in a society where family, lineage, and the continuation of the household are paramount. Being an unmarried man especially past the usual age of marriage, brings a certain societal awkwardness or even pity. Imagine the unspoken glances at village gatherings, the well-meaning but persistent questions from older relatives, or the casual assumptions about your character. Society in the Middle Ages was structured around the family unit. A man was expected to marry, to provide for a wife, to raise children, and to secure the next generation of laborers for the land or apprentices for the craft. A single man, by contrast, might be viewed as incomplete, perhaps even irresponsible for not fulfilling this fundamental social expectation. Historians still argue whether the societal pressure to marry was more about economic necessity producing labor or moral imperative church doctrine. For you, it feels like a constant, low-level hum of judgment. You might be seen as less stable, less reliable, without the anchoring responsibilities of a wife and children, while a married man's decisions were often influenced by the needs of his family. A single man's choices might seem more whimsical, less grounded. There's no little voice telling you to save every coin for your children's future, no shared burden of daily chores. This can be liberating for some, but it also means you lack the built-in support network that a family provides. A quirky tidbit: in some medieval communities, if a man remained unmarried past a certain age, he might be subjected to public mockery, like a Skimmington ride where villagers would parade effigies of bachelors through the streets. Imagine the humiliation of having a crude straw figure of yourself paraded around, all because you haven't tied the knot yet. It was a rather unsubtle hint to get on with it, wasn't it? The church, too, while valuing celibacy for its clergy heavily, promoted marriage for the laity as the only morally sanctioned outlet for sexual relations and the proper way to perpetuate Christian society. You would hear sermons extolling the virtues of marriage and the family, implicitly casting your single state as less ideal. This isn't to say you're ostracized, but rather that you exist slightly outside the societal norm, a perpetual other. In a world that thrives on interconnected familial units, this feeling, whether subtle or overt, adds another layer to the challenges of navigating medieval life as a single man, pushing you, perhaps, towards seeking a union even when economic circumstances make it difficult. While your life as a single man in the Middle Ages is often defined by hard work and scarcity, it isn't entirely devoid of moments of respite and connection. Social gatherings are rare, precious outlets, providing much-needed breaks from the monotony and opportunities for interaction beyond the daily grind. These aren't the planned parties or casual meetups of today. They are events woven into the fabric of communal life, primarily centered around religious observances or the rhythms of the agricultural year. The most consistent social outlet is the weekly Sunday gathering at the village church. This isn't just a place of worship. It's the central hub of your community. After the Mass, people linger outside, chatting, exchanging news, and catching up. You might discreetly observe the eligible women, or engage in a bit of banter with your male friends, discussing the latest harvest predictions or the Lord's new demands. It's a structured but vital opportunity to simply be with other people, to feel part of something larger than your individual struggle. Beyond Sundays, the year is punctuated by festivals tied to the church calendar. Christmas, Easter, and various saints' days are significant celebrations. Imagine the joy of these rare occasions, a chance for feasting, perhaps some rudimentary music played on a pipe or drum, and even some dancing. The ale flows more freely, stories are told, and for a few precious hours, the weight of daily toil lifts. These events are communal affairs, and while you might attend alone, you are part of the larger merriment, sharing in the collective release. Historians still argue whether medieval festivals were primarily about religious devotion or provided crucial outlets for social tension and communal bonding. For you, there's simply the best excuse to let loose a little. A quirky tidbit: during some medieval festivals, especially those around May Day, villagers would participate in folk games that often involved mock battles, wrestling, or even climbing a greased pole for a prize. Imagine the sheer, unadulterated chaos and the opportunity to prove your physical prowess, or just laugh at someone else's clumsy attempts. It was certainly more entertaining than watching paint dry, which, let's be honest, you probably did a lot of. Weddings, baptisms, and funerals also provide moments of intense social interaction, reinforcing the bonds of family and community. While a wedding might highlight your single status, it also offers a chance for celebration, a rare opportunity to wear your slightly less worn tunic and share in the joy of others. These gatherings, though limited in number, are crucial for maintaining mental well-being. They remind you that despite the hardships and the pervasive sense of solitude, you are part of a shared human experience, connected to others by tradition, faith, and the simple need for companionship. Without them, life would be an even grimmer, more isolated existence. As a single man in medieval society, there's a particular kind of quiet vulnerability that often accompanies your unattached status. Without the immediate presence of a spouse or children, you often lack a crucial support network that most others take for granted. This isn't just about emotional comfort. It's about practical survival in a world where individual resilience is often not enough. Imagine falling ill. If you're a married man, your wife would nurse you, bring you water, prepare what little broth she could, and tend to your small plot of land while you recover. If you're a single man, however, who looks after you, perhaps a kindly neighbor might offer a bowl of thin gruel, or your aging mother, if she's still alive and capable, but without the constant, dedicated care of an immediate family member, a serious illness can quickly become a death sentence. There's no hospital you can check into, no professional nursing staff to ensure your recovery. Your well-being is often a communal responsibility, but it's a responsibility more readily assumed for those with immediate dependents. Historians still argue whether medieval mutual aid networks sufficiently compensated for the lack of familial support for single individuals. For you, it's a silent fear, a constant awareness of your precarious position beyond illness. There's the sheer weight of daily labor. As we've discussed, life is relentless work. A peasant family works as a unit, sharing the burden of the fields, the chores, and the care of livestock. If you're a single peasant, you face the same amount of work with fewer hands. Every furrow plowed, every sheaf harvested, every repair made to your hut falls squarely on your own shoulders. This isn't just physically taxing, it's mentally exhausting. There's no one to share the load, no one to commiserate with after a particularly brutal day, no one to rely on when your strength wanes. A quirky tidbit: while not common, some medieval villages had communal spinning bees or threshing parties, where single men and women might gather to work together on tasks, offering a rare opportunity for social interaction and mutual aid, disguised as productive labor. Imagine using a group chore as your best chance to flirt. It certainly made mundane tasks a little more interesting, didn't it? Economic hardship, too, hits harder when you're alone. A bad harvest or an unexpected tax can devastate a family. But they have multiple members who might find temporary work or pool their meager resources. As a single man, you have only yourself. There's no secondary income, no one else's labor to fall back on. This makes you more susceptible to poverty, more likely to face hunger, and less able to recover from setbacks. While you might gain a degree of personal freedom by not being tied down by a family, you trade it for a heightened sense of insecurity, constantly aware that your resilience is your only true shield against the harsh realities of your world. In a society as rigidly structured as medieval Europe, your legal standing and protections are often directly tied to your social class, your relationship to the land, and your family unit. As a single man, particularly one without significant property or a recognized guild affiliation, you frequently find yourself in a vulnerable position, possessing limited rights compared to your married, landowning, or guild-affiliated counterparts. Imagine a dispute arising in the village. If a married man's field is trampled, his family is there to bear witness, and his standing as a household head gives his complaint weight in the Lord's court. But if your meager possessions are stolen, or if you face an accusation, who speaks for you? Without a family to vouch for your character or a clear lineage of land ownership, your claims can be easily dismissed. Your rights, in essence, are often communal, flowing from your position within the village structure or from your lord's benevolent or not so benevolent will, rather than from inherent individual freedoms. Historians still argue whether medieval legal systems were primarily designed to protect individual rights or to maintain social order and hierarchy. For you, it feels like the latter, a system built to keep things as they are. You have few formal avenues for recourse if you are wronged. There are no police forces as you understand them, and justice is often local, swift, and arbitrary. The Lord's court, or that of his appointed reeve, is the primary legal authority. If you are accused of a crime, you might face trial by ordeal, carrying a hot iron, or being thrown into cold water, where divine intervention is supposed to prove your innocence. It's a terrifying prospect, with little room for logic or fairness. Your lack of social standing means you are less likely to command respect or sympathy from those in power. A quirky tidbit: in some medieval legal traditions, a man could clear his name by finding oath helpers, respected members of the community who would swear to his innocence, even if they didn't witness the event. Imagine trying to rustle up character references when you're a solitary bachelor with few deep ties. It certainly put a premium on popularity, didn't it? Even aspects of your personal life are subject to external control. As we discussed, marrying outside your manor might require a fee, the muchet, demonstrating that your very personal choices are constrained by feudal obligations. Your ability to inherit property, if any, is also dictated by complex, customary laws, and without direct heirs. Your meager possessions might revert to the Lord or the Church upon your death. In essence, you exist within a system where legal protections are primarily afforded to those who are economically productive within a defined social unit. As a single man, you are often seen as less established, and therefore less deserving of the full protections afforded to others. Your vulnerability is not just social or economic, it is deeply embedded in the very legal framework of your world. While some single men, particularly those in guilds or as successful merchants, might attain a measure of financial stability, true economic independence remains a distant dream for most. For you, living in the Middle Ages, the concept of being self-sufficient, beholden to no one, is almost mythical. Most are inextricably dependent on the feudal system, on the whims of a lord, or on the precarious patronage of others, further limiting your autonomy and agency. Imagine the relentless cycle. You work the land, but you don't own it. The Lord grants you the right to farm it, and in return you owe him labor, produce, and various fees. This means that no matter how hard you toil, a significant portion of your output, your very livelihood, is siphoned off. You are economically tied to him, unable to move freely, unable to simply save up and buy your own parcel of land. Your surplus, if you manage to generate any, is often barely enough to survive the next lean season, let alone accumulate significant wealth. There's no investment portfolio, no retirement fund. Your future is tied to the soil and the success of the next harvest. Historians still argue whether the feudal system was primarily a system of exploitation or a necessary framework for stability in a pre-modern economy. For you, it's simply the unchangeable reality that governs your every economic decision. Even if you escape the feudal system by venturing into a town, genuine independence is still elusive. As a journeyman, you work for wages, always dependent on finding a master willing to employ you. Your skills are valuable, but the market for them can fluctuate. Should you ever become a master craftsman, you gain more control, but you are still bound by the rules of your guild, by the availability of raw materials, and by the demand of your customers. The idea of starting a business without significant initial capital, without connections, and without the support of a family unit is incredibly daunting, if not impossible. A quirky tidbit: medieval peasants often engaged in informal barter, economies where goods and services were exchanged without money. Imagine trading a few eggs for a repaired shoe, or offering a day's labor in exchange for some shared use of a tool. It made daily life possible, but certainly didn't allow for long-term financial planning beyond basic survival. It was a bit like a constant, low-stakes game of economic musical chairs, wasn't it? For many single men, economic life is about managing scarcity, about making do with what little you have. You are constantly on the edge, always vulnerable to crop failure, disease, or the arbitrary demands of those above you in the social hierarchy. Your opportunities to accumulate wealth are severely limited, and the notion of truly rising above your birthright through sheer economic power is almost unheard of. Your life is an endless testament to resourcefulness, but also to the profound lack of control over your own financial destiny. This lack of economic independence is a heavy weight, shaping your decisions and reinforcing your place within the rigid social order. Given the constant economic pressures and the lack of systemic support, your life as a single man in the Middle Ages becomes a masterclass in survival strategies and sheer ingenuity. You learn to be resourceful, making do with what little you have and adapting to challenges with a pragmatism born of necessity. This isn't about grand plans. It's about the daily micro-decisions that keep you fed, sheltered, and alive. Imagine needing a new tool. There's no shop to buy it from, no credit available. You might spend days collecting suitable wood, shaping it with rudimentary tools, and perhaps even forging a simple metal part yourself if you have access to a forge and some basic blacksmithing skills. You learn to mend rather than replace, to repair worn-out clothing with painstaking stitches, to patch a leaky roof with whatever materials are at hand. Every item has value, every scrap is potentially useful. This culture of reuse and self-sufficiency is deeply ingrained, a direct consequence of pervasive scarcity. Historians still argue whether medieval peasants were truly innovative in their daily lives or simply relied on inherited methods due to limited resources. For you, innovation is born from urgent need. You become intimately familiar with your natural environment, not just for farming, but for foraging. You learn which wild plants are edible, which berries are safe, and where to find medicinal herbs to treat common ailments. You might set simple snares for small game or fish in a nearby stream, supplementing your meager diet with whatever nature provides. This knowledge is passed down through generations, a vital part of your informal education, turning the wilderness around you into a living pantry and pharmacy. A quirky tidbit to extend the life of their precious candles, often made from tallow, which smelled terrible. Medieval people sometimes used rushlights, dried rushes dipped in animal fat, which burned with a dim, flickering light. Imagine trying to read by a glorified, greasy string, knowing that your more expensive candle was too precious to waste. It certainly put modern lighting into perspective. Beyond material resourcefulness, you develop mental resilience. You learn to endure hardship, to accept setbacks, and to find small moments of joy amidst the constant struggle. Humor, often dark or sarcastic, becomes a coping mechanism, a way to diffuse tension and maintain morale during brutal labor or lean times. You rely on the informal networks of your village or your fellow journeymen, offering a helping hand in exchange for future favors, building a web of reciprocal obligations that serves as an unspoken insurance policy. When formal systems fail, it's this personal ingenuity and communal reliance that keeps you going. Your life is a testament to the human capacity to adapt, to survive, and to find ways to thrive, even in the most challenging circumstances. In an age devoid of modern sanitation and medical understanding, your hygiene and health realities are stark, challenging, and a constant threat to your very existence. Forget daily showers, toothpaste, or even readily available clean water. Life is a grimy, odorous affair, and illness is a terrifyingly common companion. Imagine the pervasive smell. Your clothes are rarely washed thoroughly, perhaps just rinsed in a cold stream, and they carry the accumulated scents of smoke, sweat, and animal proximity. You likely bathe infrequently, if at all, especially during the colder months. Your hair might be a tangled mess, a haven for lice and fleas, and your teeth, if you're lucky enough to still have most of them, are probably stained and decaying, leading to constant aches. There's no concept of germ theory. The connection between filth and disease is largely unknown. People attribute illness to bad air, divine displeasure, or imbalances of humors in the body. Historians still argue whether medieval people simply accepted their grim hygiene as normal or constantly sought ways to improve it within their limited understanding. For you, it's just the baseline of existence, inescapable and largely unchangeable. The lack of proper sanitation is a major factor in your health. Human and animal waste often accumulates in village streets or just outside homes, serving as breeding grounds for flies and rats, which in turn spread disease. Your drinking water, drawn from a communal well or a local stream, is often contaminated, leading to outbreaks of dysentery and other waterborne illnesses. The simplest cut or scrape can become infected, swelling painfully and sometimes leading to gangrene and death. As there are no antibiotics or sterile medical instruments, a quirky tidbit, some medieval medical remedies were truly bizarre, ranging from ground-up mummified remains to applying pigeon droppings for baldness. Imagine having a persistent cough and being offered a concoction made of dried toad powder. It certainly makes you appreciate modern medicine, doesn't it? Though, in fairness, some herbal remedies were genuinely effective, illness, when it strikes, is a terrifying experience. A fever can rage uncontrollably, turning your body into a burning inferno. A simple cold can develop into pneumonia, filling even the strongest man. Childbirth is incredibly dangerous for women, and infant mortality rates are astronomically high. Life expectancy is significantly lower than today, often barely reaching into the 30s or 40s for common folk. Due to constant exposure to disease, malnutrition, and the physical toll of hard labor, there are no doctors as we know them. Perhaps a local healer relying on traditional remedies, or a barber surgeon capable of basic bloodletting or amputation. Your body is constantly under siege, and every day you wake without a new ache or cough is a small victory. This stark reality means that health is not a given, but a fragile state, constantly threatened by the very conditions of your medieval life. In your world, dear listener, the concept of material wealth is radically different from what you understand today. Your personal possessions are remarkably few, reflecting a life lived close to the bone, where utility trumps luxury and every item serves a crucial purpose. There's no sprawling wardrobe, no collection of gadgets, no sentimental trinkets lining shelves. Everything you own fits into a small, manageable bundle, often carried on your back if you travel. Imagine your entire worldly goods consisting of a single, well-worn tunic and a pair of breeches, perhaps a spare set for Sunday or special occasions. Your shoes, if you have them, are simple leather or wooden clogs, built for durability rather than fashion. A rough wool cloak provides warmth against the biting cold. These clothes are patched and mended until they are utterly beyond repair, a testament to their value and the scarcity of new materials. You might possess a sturdy leather belt, perhaps a small, blunt knife for daily tasks, and a pouch containing a few paltry coins if you've managed to earn any. Historians still argue whether medieval peasants truly desired more material possessions, or were largely content with their minimalist lives. For you, desire is secondary to necessity. Dreams of luxury are for nobles. Within your humble home, your possessions are communal, shared with your family. Perhaps a wooden spoon and bowl are your own, but the cooking pot, the tools for farming, the sleeping pallets, these are shared resources. There are no individual rooms, no private spaces for personal collections. Every item is functional, necessary for survival. A small religious token, like a wooden crucifix or a blessed amulet, might be your only truly personal item, carrying spiritual significance rather than monetary value. A quirky tidbit to keep track of their few valuables. Medieval peasants sometimes used tally sticks, notched pieces of wood split in half, with each party to an agreement, keeping one half. Imagine needing a piece of wood just to remember how many loaves of bread you owed your neighbor. It certainly makes digital banking feel less complicated, doesn't it? The absence of abundant possessions fosters a different relationship with material things. You are not defined by what you own, but by what you do and by your place within the community. There's no consumer culture, no advertising to tempt you with shiny new objects. Your focus is on the basic necessities of food, shelter, and warmth. The things you do possess are cherished for their usefulness, for their ability to help you endure the hardships of life. This forced minimalism shapes your perspective, teaching you to value practicality and resilience above all else, making you acutely aware that true security lies not in possessions, but in your ability to survive and in the bonds of your community. In the medieval world, the concept of masculinity is deeply ingrained, shaped by the harsh realities of survival, the demands of the social hierarchy, and the pervasive influence of the church. As a single man, you constantly feel the weight of societal expectations, as masculinity is primarily viewed through the lens of protection, provision, and lineage, posing a unique challenge to your unattached status. Imagine the archetypes around you: the lord, the knight, the head of a peasant household. All embody forms of masculinity tied to their ability to defend their lands, provide for their dependents, and ensure the continuation of their line. For a peasant man, your primary masculine duty is to work the land, to produce food, and eventually to father children who will continue to farm and support the family. You are expected to be strong, resilient, and capable of arduous physical labor. To shirk work, to show weakness in the face of hardship, would be to fail in your fundamental masculine role in the eyes of your community. Historians still argue whether medieval gender roles were as rigid in practice as they were in theory, or if there was more fluidity in daily life. For you, the expectations are clear, if sometimes difficult to meet. Being single, therefore, presents a specific challenge to these ingrained ideals. Without a wife and children, you are not directly fulfilling the role of provider and protector in the most conventional sense. While you certainly provide for yourself through your labor, you lack the tangible proof of a family unit that signals complete masculine maturity in society's eyes. You might be seen as less settled, perhaps even less responsible, because you haven't taken on the burdens and responsibilities that define manhood for most. A quirky tidbit: medieval men, even peasants, often took pride in their physical prowess. With wrestling, jousting for nobles, of course, but the idea trickled down, and feats of strength being popular forms of entertainment and ways to prove one's manliness. Imagine a village strongman contest, where bragging rights and perhaps a bit of extra ale were earned by lifting the heaviest stone. It was certainly a more direct way to impress than, say, displaying your cryptocurrency portfolio. The church, too, plays a role, promoting marriage as the sacred union for the propagation of humanity, with celibacy reserved for the devout clergy. For the common man, the expectation is to marry and procreate. Your masculinity is tied to your ability to sire heirs, ensuring the continuation of your family line and providing future labor for the fields or hands for the craft. As a single man, you constantly exist slightly outside this dominant narrative. While you can prove your strength in the fields or your skill in a trade, you still navigate a subtle societal pressure, a quiet understanding that your masculinity, however robust, is not yet fully expressed until you become the head of your own household. This pushes you, perhaps subconsciously, towards seeking a union, even if economic factors make it a delayed dream. As a single man in the Middle Ages, the traditional concept of legacy passing on your name and property through children is largely unavailable to you. Yet, in a world where physical survival is often paramount, you still find ways to leave your mark, to contribute to the tapestry of life that extends beyond your own fleeting existence. For single men, legacy isn't about direct lineage, but perhaps a skill, a reputation, or a quiet devotion that resonates within your immediate community. Imagine the work of your hands. If you are a peasant, your legacy might be the fertile fields you meticulously tended, the improvements you made to a drainage ditch, or the hardy livestock you helped raise. These are contributions that benefit the entire village, ensuring future harvests and the continuation of communal life. If you are a craftsman, Your legacy could be the sturdy chair you built, the beautiful piece of cloth you wove, or the well-forged tool that serves many hands for years to come. These creations outlive you, silent testaments to your skill and dedication. Historians still argue whether medieval common folk had a strong sense of individual legacy or simply merged into the collective memory of their communities. For you, your mark is often physical, tangible, and practical. Perhaps your legacy lies in your reputation. Were you known as a hard worker, reliable in a crisis? Were you fair in your dealings as a merchant? Was your advice sought after in village disputes? In a society built on oral tradition and personal connection, a good name could echo through generations, shaping how you are remembered, even without a direct heir. Your personal character, your integrity, and your contributions to the social fabric become your enduring mark, etched not in stone, but in the collective memory of your neighbors. A quirky tidbit: some medieval villages had communal memory houses, or traditions where elders would gather to recount the history of the village, including stories of prominent or notorious individuals who had passed. Imagine having your life story, perhaps slightly embellished, becoming a part of your village's oral history, told around a crackling fire for generations. It's certainly a more personal form of immortality than a gravestone. For those who chose the path of the clergy, your legacy is a quiet devotion. As a monk, it might be the meticulously copied manuscript, a line of scripture preserved through your painstaking labor. As a priest, it could be the souls you guided, the solace you provided, or the unwavering faith you embodied for your flock. This legacy is spiritual, intellectual, and community-focused, transcending the need for biological heirs. Your impact is felt in the continuation of knowledge, the strength of faith, and the moral guidance you offered. Ultimately, whether through the enduring quality of your labor, the strength of your character, or the depth of your spiritual commitment, you leave a trace. It might not be a grand monument or a sprawling dynasty, but it is a genuine mark on the world you inhabited, a subtle testament to a life lived, a contribution made, and a quiet endurance that helped shape the very fabric of the Middle Ages. The distant sounds of the day are fading now, softening into the gentle hush of the night. Feel the quiet settle around you, wrapping you in its calm embrace. The rustle of the leaves outside, perhaps the distant murmur of an evening breeze, all merge into a soothing whisper. The world of the medieval single man, with its struggles and its quiet triumphs, slowly recedes, becoming a distant echo in the quiet corners of your mind. There's nothing more to worry about, nothing to strive for, just this deepening stillness. Let the imagery soften, the sharp edges of hardship blur as you drift into a peaceful tranquility. Rest deeply now, let your thoughts unwind, and surrender to the quiet comfort of the night. Sweet dreams.